I never thought I'd be the one posting here, but after what happened last month at Westlake Community Center, I need to share this somewhere people will understand. My name's Melissa Carter, a 32-year-old former collegiate basketball player turned high school coach in Westlake, Ohio. Basketball has been my life, but these days I mostly shoot hoops at the community center for fun and to stay sharp for when I run drills with my girls' team. The Westlake Community Center has always been my sanctuary. 3 courts, decent lighting, and a good mix of regulars who know the unspoken rules of pickup games. Everything was perfect until the center hired a new activities director 2 months ago. Enter Jackson Reed, former Navy SEAL who made sure everyone knew his background within 5 minutes of meeting him. The center's board hired him to revitalize programming and instill discipline. At first, his military precision seemed like it might be good for the place. The equipment room got organized, the schedules became more consistent, and there was a new energy. But then came the changes nobody asked for. Jackson decided the basketball courts needed structure and began implementing what he called optimization protocols. Basically, he cut open gym hours in half to make room for his new tactical fitness classes that cost extra and were mostly attended by his growing fan club of middle-aged men reliving glory days they never had. I first noticed something was off when he interrupted our regular Tuesday night pickup game 10 minutes early. "Time's up, folks. Elite performance training starts now," he announced, standing at center court in his tight, Under Armour shirt with arms crossed. When Lewis, one of our regulars, pointed out we still had court time according to the schedule, Jackson just smirked and said, "The schedule's been optimized. You can check the updated version on the website." None of us had been notified of any changes. When I approached him after everyone reluctantly cleared out, his response was my first real red flag. "Listen, sweetheart," he said, looking down at me with that practiced intensity they must teach in SEAL training. "Civilian recreational activities are lower priority than performance training. That's just how it works in the real world." Sweetheart. The word hung in the air between us, and I immediately knew exactly what kind of man Jackson Reed was going to be. The following week, I arrived early to secure court time for our regular group. The new sign-up sheet Jackson implemented required a group leader signature, so I wrote my name down for the 7 to 9 p.m. slot that had been ours for years. I was shooting around when Jackson strode in, clipboard in hand. He walked directly to me, interrupting my free throw routine. "There's a problem with your reservation," he said, tapping his pen against the clipboard. "What problem?" I asked, tucking the ball under my arm. "Women's recreational groups are now scheduled for Thursdays only. Men's competitive play gets priority on Tuesdays." I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. "Excuse me. Since when is there gender segregation at a community center?" Jackson sighed like he was explaining something to a child. "It's not segregation, it's optimization. My data shows the male players utilize court space more efficiently. They run full-court games with minimal downtime. The women's groups tend to be more," he paused, searching for a word, "social." My cheeks burned. "Our group has men and women. We've played together for years." "And now you'll play on Thursdays," he responded flatly. "All the women can join the new fundamentals of basketball class I'm offering. Might help tighten up those shooting mechanics." He glanced pointedly at the ball in my hands. I stood my ground. "The reservation system doesn't mention any gender restrictions. We signed up properly, and we'll be here at 7. Jackson's expression hardened. "The system is subject to director's discretion, which is mine, and I've determined that Tuesday nights are now elite play only." When our group arrived that evening, we found the court occupied by Jackson and a handful of guys I'd never seen before, all wearing identical Reed Elite training t-shirts. Our regular court time had been given away. Luis and Marco wanted to confront him, but I held them back. "Not yet," I said. "Let's try to handle this the right way." The next day, I emailed the community center board about the reservation issue. 3 days later, I received a response. All scheduling concerns should be directed to the activities director. Mr. Reed has full authority over programming decisions. When Thursday came around, I reluctantly gathered our group for our new designated time. 5 minutes before we were set to start, Jackson appeared with his whistle. "Change of plans," he announced. "Thursday evenings now include mandatory skills assessment for all court users. Anyone scoring below the qualifying threshold will need to complete the fundamentals program before returning to open play." That was when Marco lost it. "This is a community center, man, not SEAL training." Jackson's eyes narrowed. That attitude. That's exactly why some people need more structure. He turned to me. "As group leader, you should control your players better." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Within a month, Jackson had completely transformed the community center culture. New rules appeared daily, always announced via last-minute emails or hastily printed signs. Most egregiously, he implemented a new skills rating system that mysteriously placed his friends and clients at the top tiers, granting them priority in all facility usage. My team of high school girls couldn't even book practice time unless I paid the new premium reservation fee that conveniently matched his private training rates. When I complained to the front desk staff, I discovered they were equally frustrated but afraid to speak up. "He's got the board wrapped around his finger," whispered Denise, who'd worked the check-in desk for years. "They think he'll bring in all these corporate clients with his military background. Nobody wants to challenge him." The breaking point for many regulars came when Jackson converted the smaller basketball court into his tactical training zone, complete with ropes, tires, and expensive equipment that required additional membership fees to access. Luis, who'd been bringing his kids to shoot hoops on weekends for years, couldn't afford the new family premium pass. When he tried to use the remaining court during designated community hours, Jackson appeared from nowhere. "This is advanced training time," Jackson informed him. "The schedule says community hours until noon," Luz replied, showing him the printed schedule. Jackson rolled his eyes. "That's outdated. Real leaders adapt to changing conditions." He pointed to his phone. Updated schedule went out in the premium member newsletter. I watched from across the gym as Luis gathered his disappointed kids and left. Something in me snapped. This wasn't just about basketball anymore. It was about a community being dismantled by one man's ego. That evening, I created a group chat with several displaced regulars. "We need to talk about the Jackson situation," I wrote. Within minutes, responses flooded in. We weren't alone. Seniors had lost their walking hours. The after-school program had been pushed to a smaller space. Even the maintenance staff reported increasing demands and disrespect. He told Mr. Henderson his mopping technique was unoptimized and made him redo the entire gym floor, wrote Alexa, whose husband worked maintenance. Henderson's been here 22 years. Jackson's behavior toward me had grown increasingly condescending. During a rare moment when I managed to use the court to practice with my high school team, he stood watching with arms crossed. "Your defensive drills are outdated," he announced loudly in front of my girls. In the real world, that approach gets you annihilated. My team, teenage girls working on fundamentals, looked at me uncertainly as he proceeded to demonstrate proper technique, interrupting our limited practice time. Later, when I confronted him privately, his response chilled me. "Listen, Coach Carter," he said with a smirk, "you might be fine with mediocrity, but I'm bringing excellence to this facility. If that threatens you, maybe you're in the wrong profession." 6 weeks after Jackson's arrival, I received an email that made my stomach drop. Notice of coaching privilege review. The message, copied to the community center board and my high school athletic director, cited multiple incidents of unprofessional conduct and resistance to facility improvements. According to the email, my team's access to the community center was under review pending a formal assessment of coaching standards. I sat staring at my screen in disbelief. Jackson was actually trying to get my team banned, and potentially threatening my coaching position at the school. That night, I could barely sleep. My coaching job wasn't just a paycheck, it was my passion. These girls counted on me. The community center wasn't just a building. It was where generations of local kids had learned to play. The next morning, I arrived early to meet with my school's athletic director, Frank Williams. "This is concerning, Melissa," Frank said, showing me a formal letter from Jackson that had arrived on official community center letterhead. "He's claiming you've repeatedly violated facility policies and demonstrated hostile behavior towards staff." "None of that is true," I insisted. "He's systematically pushing out longtime community members to make room for his expensive programs." Frank looked sympathetic but cautious. "I believe you, but the school board takes facility partnerships seriously. If we lose community center access, our programs suffer. We need to handle this delicately." Translation: don't rock the boat. That afternoon, I went to the center to clear my head, only to find my access card deactivated. The front desk attendant looked embarrassed. "Jackson said your membership is on administrative hold pending review," she whispered. "I'm sorry, Melissa." Through the glass doors, I could see Jackson in the gym with what looked like a private client, during what used to be community hours. Standing in the parking lot, I felt a wave of helplessness crash over me. This man was systematically dismantling a community institution, and everyone was too intimidated to stop him. For a moment, I considered giving up, finding another facility for my team, accepting that the center we'd all loved was gone. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Lucia, one of my players. "Coach, when's our next practice at the center? Working on that move you showed us." Something hardened within me. This wasn't just about basketball or my wounded pride. This was about a community worth fighting for and showing my girls what it means to stand up to bullies, even when they have titles and authority. I got in my car, but instead of driving home defeated, I headed towards City Hall. It was time to fight back, not with Jackson's tactics of intimidation, but with something he clearly underestimated: preparation and facts. City Hall's records department wasn't exactly a high-traffic area on a Wednesday afternoon. The clerk looked surprised when I asked to see the community center's charter documents and operational guidelines. "Research for a community project," I explained with a smile. 3 hours later, I emerged with a legal pad full of notes and a growing sense of clarity. The Westlake Community Center had been established with specific language about ensuring equitable access and prioritizing community needs over commercial interests. More importantly, any substantial programming changes required formal board approval following a public comment period, neither of which had happened with Jackson's overhaul. My next stop was the library, where I spent hours searching newspaper archives. What I found was illuminating. Jackson Reed had held similar positions at 3 other facilities in different states, each time leaving after approximately 1 year. Online reviews for these facilities showed suspiciously similar patterns. Initial complaints about sudden changes followed by glowing reviews from new clientele. I created a private online survey and shared it with former community center regulars. Within 24 hours, I had documented over 40 specific incidents of rule changes, access restrictions, and inappropriate behavior. Armed with this information, I contacted Elaine Morgan, a retired attorney who had run the center's senior program for years before being optimized out of her volunteer position. "He can't do half of what he's doing," she confirmed after reviewing my notes. "The center's bylaws and grant funding requirements explicitly prohibit the kind of exclusionary practices you're describing." My fight-back strategy was taking shape, but I needed allies within the system. I reached out to Denise from the front desk, who connected me with 3 board members who were quietly concerned about membership cancellations, but afraid to challenge Jackson's apparent success. "He presents these amazing revenue projections," explained board member Thomas Griffith during our discreet coffee meeting. The numbers look good on paper, but we've been hearing rumblings. They're not rumblings, I replied, sliding across my documentation. They're warning sirens. While Thomas reviewed the materials, I implemented the next phase of my plan. I started a private social media group called Community Centers Should Be for Communities, carefully documenting each policy change with before and after comparisons. Membership grew to over 200 people in days. Jackson, meanwhile, seemed to sense resistance forming. He began sending daily email success updates to the board highlighting membership upgrades and revenue increases, conveniently omitting the exodus of longtime members. He also accelerated his timeline for renovating the main court, attempting to create irreversible changes. When he spotted me taking photos of the new pricing structure posted by the entrance, his facade cracked. "Building a case won't work, coach," he said, suddenly appearing beside me. "The board sees results. Your little community nostalgia can't compete with financial growth." I met his gaze steadily. "This isn't about nostalgia, Jackson. It's about purpose. This center exists to serve everyone, not to be your personal training facility." He laughed. "Purpose doesn't pay bills. Excellence attracts excellence. The people who can't keep up. That's natural selection." As he walked away, I noticed something I'd missed before: a large banner promoting upcoming Reed Elite Training certification with a substantial registration fee. A quick search on my phone confirmed my suspicion. He was selling certification in his own made-up training methodology, using the community center's reputation and facilities to legitimize it. That was the missing piece. Jackson wasn't just changing the center. He was using it as a marketing platform for his personal brand, likely violating multiple policies about using public facilities for private enterprise. The next board meeting was in 2 days. It was time to bring everything into the light. The board meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. in the community center's multipurpose room. By 6:30, the space was filled beyond capacity. Seniors, families, teenagers, and longtime members, all responding to our quiet campaign to show up and speak up. Jackson arrived precisely at 6:55, his confident stride faltering slightly at the sight of the crowd. I watched his eyes scan the room, calculating, before he composed himself and took his place at the staff table. Board President Margaret Winters seemed taken aback by the turnout. "We apparently have significant community interest tonight." When the meeting opened for public comments, I was the first to the microphone. The room fell silent. For over 20 years, the Westlake Community Center has been the heart of our neighborhood. I began, my voice steadier than I felt. In the past 2 months, that heart has been systematically stopped from beating for many of us. I presented our findings methodically: the undisclosed policy changes, the comparison of current practices against the center's charter, the transformation of community spaces into profit centers. I distributed folders to each board member containing membership statistics, showing the dramatic drop in usage by families, seniors, and youth groups, alongside evidence of Jackson using the facility to promote his personal business ventures. "This isn't about resistance to change," I concluded. "It's about upholding the very purpose of this institution: to serve all members of this community, not just those who can afford premium access." Jackson's face remained impassive, though I noticed his knuckles whitening as he gripped his pen. When it was his turn to respond, he was prepared. "These accusations reflect a fundamental misunderstanding of modern facility management," he said smoothly. "Change is uncomfortable, but our revenue is up 22% despite losing members who weren't fully utilizing services. That's optimization." He projected slides showing selective financial data, carefully framed to support his narrative. As for the private business allegations, the Reed Elite Training Program creates revenue-sharing opportunities for the center. That's not exploitation. It's smart partnership. The board seemed conflicted, exactly as Jackson had planned. But then something unexpected happened. Thomas Griffith, the board member I'd met with, spoke up. I'd like to address the revenue question. Our finance committee conducted a full analysis after receiving these concerns. He distributed his own documents. The 22% revenue increase comes entirely from non-resident memberships and premium packages, while we've lost 40% of our core community users. Our grant funding is explicitly tied to serving local residents, particularly underserved populations. Jackson's expression tightened. With all due respect, the financial strategy. Also, Thomas continued, I've confirmed that no board vote was ever taken on the programming overhaul or fee structure changes, which violates Section 4.3 of our operating procedures. Other board members began flipping through their bylaws with concerned expressions. Jackson attempted to regain control. These procedural technicalities can be addressed moving forward. The point is, we're creating a facility of excellence. That's when Lewis stepped to the microphone. Excellence for who? My kids can't even play basketball here anymore. The place their grandparents helped build. One by one, community members shared their experiences. Seniors who could no longer afford their walking club. Parents whose children had been excluded from programs. Volunteers whose decades of service had been dismissed. The energy in the room shifted. Board members began asking pointed questions. Jackson's responses grew increasingly defensive and technical, losing the charm that had initially won people over. Toward the end of the meeting, Margaret Winters made an announcement. In light of tonight's discussion, the board will conduct a full review of recent operational changes. In the meantime, we're implementing an immediate return to the previous fee structure and access policies until proper procedures for changes can be followed. The look on Jackson's face as he realized his authority was being publicly curtailed was brief but unmistakable. For the first time since his arrival, he wasn't in control. As the meeting adjourned, he approached me with a tight smile. Impressive mobilization, Coach. But this isn't over. The board will see that sentimentality is a poor business strategy. I matched his smile with one of my own. This was never about business, Jackson. That's what you still don't understand. The 2 weeks following the board meeting were tense. Jackson maintained a rigorously professional demeanor while the board conducted their review, but small acts of retaliation surfaced. My team's equipment would mysteriously be unavailable. Rooms we'd reserved would be double booked. Nothing provable, just enough to send a message. The community, however, had found its voice. Attendance at the center surged as people reclaimed their spaces. Our social media group evolved into an active community organizing platform where members shared updates and coordinated volunteer efforts to improve the center. Jackson countered by bringing in more outside clients and doubling down on his premium services, creating a bizarre parallel reality within the same building. His sleek, exclusive programs operating alongside the revitalized community activities. The board's review committee worked methodically, interviewing staff and reviewing documents. I provided everything we'd gathered while continuing my normal coaching duties, trying to stay above the fray despite the palpable tension whenever Jackson and I crossed paths. The final review meeting was scheduled for a Friday evening. Unlike the previous open forum, this was to be a closed session where Jackson and I would each have 30 minutes to present to the full board before they made their decision. I arrived early, nerves jangling despite my preparation. This wasn't just about basketball courts anymore. It was about what kind of community we wanted to be. Jackson arrived in a crisp suit, carrying a leather portfolio and exuding confidence. We nodded stiffly to each other in the waiting area. No hard feelings, he said with practiced casualness. This is just business. You play your game, I play mine. Except this isn't a game, I replied. And it's not business. It's people's lives and community. He shrugged. Communities evolve. The strong adapt. Before I could respond, we were called in. The boardroom felt cavernous with just the 7 board members seated at the large table. Jackson presented first, his approach polished and data-driven. He emphasized financial growth, facility improvements, and modernized programming to meet evolving market demands. His language was precise, his visualizations professional. Change is never comfortable, he concluded smoothly, but excellence requires bold vision. The question isn't whether we can return to the past, but whether Westlake wants to lead or follow in community recreation. The board listened attentively, asking occasional questions about specific numbers. Jackson had answers for everything. When my turn came, I felt the weight of contrast. My simple presentation folder against his glossy materials. I took a deep breath and began not with numbers, but with names. Elena Ramirez, age 73, walked 5 mornings a week in our gym for her heart health until the senior walking program was replaced with tactical circuit training. Michael Poteau, age 14, improved his grades and found mentors through the after-school program that's now been reduced to half its previous size. I continued with specific stories, connecting each to the center's mission statement while acknowledging the need for financial sustainability. But instead of just criticizing, I presented an alternative. A collaborative strategic plan developed with input from staff, volunteers, and members that balanced innovation with accessibility. Excellence isn't measured by exclusivity, I said. It's measured by impact. A truly excellent community center lifts everyone up, not just those who can afford premium access. As questions began, the door opened suddenly. Frank Williams, my school's athletic director, stepped in along with 3 people I didn't recognize. "I apologize for the interruption," Frank said. "But these individuals have information directly relevant to your deliberations." Margaret Winters looked startled but nodded. "We'll hear them briefly." The first was a woman who introduced herself as the Parks and Recreation Director from Plymouth, Michigan. "We employed Mr. Reed in a similar capacity 2 years ago. He implemented identical programs and fee structures, resulting in a 63% drop in community utilization and the loss of 2 major grants due to failure to meet inclusion requirements. We're still rebuilding community trust." The second was a man from the state's Recreation Association who detailed how Jackson's certification program violated multiple standards for legitimate professional credentials. The final speaker was a young man who had worked as Jackson's assistant at his previous position. "The financial projections he's showing you? I helped create them at his last facility. They never materialized because they depend on membership conversions that don't happen once community goodwill is destroyed." The board sat in stunned silence. Jackson's face had gone rigid. "These accusations are completely unfounded," he said, his voice tight. "My record speaks for itself." "Yes," said Thomas Griffith, sliding forward a folder. "It does. We've received confirmation from 3 previous employers documenting patterns identical to what we've experienced. You were never vetted properly because you used personal connections to bypass our normal hiring protocols." The atmosphere in the room had transformed. Jackson sensed it, his SEAL training kicking in as he shifted to damage control. "Every facility has resistance to change," he argued. "If we cave to community sentiment of a sound business practice, we'd still be using outdated equipment and program models. Is that what Westlake wants? Mediocrity in the name of inclusivity." The word hung in the air. Margaret Winters removed her glasses slowly. "Mr. Reed," she said carefully, "this center was founded with a mission statement that begins, 'To serve all members of the Westlake community regardless of age, ability, or economic status.' If you believe inclusivity and excellence are mutually exclusive, you fundamentally misunderstand our purpose." 2 weeks later, I was shooting free throws when Luis and his kids came bounding into the gym. "Coach Carter," his daughter Sophia called, racing over. "Did you see the new sign?" Outside the main entrance, a freshly installed plaque read, "Westlake Community Center. Excellence through inclusion." Jackson Reed was gone, having resigned to pursue other opportunities, according to the official statement. The reality, as board member Thomas Griffith privately shared, was less dignified, faced with termination and potential investigation into misuse of facility resources. Jackson had accepted a quiet departure. The changes came swiftly after that. Premium memberships were converted to standard ones with prorated refunds. The tactical training zone equipment was sold, and the proceeds funded renovations to the children's area. The skills rating system was abolished, replaced with thoughtful programming that balanced all community needs. Most meaningfully, the board established a community advisory council with representatives from all user groups, seniors, youth, families, and serious athletes alike. I was asked to serve as the council's first chairperson. "You showed us what leadership really looks like," Margaret told me. "Not imposing your vision, but amplifying the community's voice." The most satisfying moment came when we hosted the district basketball championships. Our facility was chosen specifically because of our renewed commitment to inclusive programming while maintaining excellent standards. My high school team made it to the finals, playing their hearts out on the same courts they'd almost been banned from months earlier. During a timeout in the championship game, I spotted a familiar face in the crowded bleachers, Jackson Reed, watching from the top row. Our eyes met briefly across the gymnasium. I nodded once, neither gloating nor hostile. He held my gaze for a moment before turning and walking out, disappearing as quickly as he'd appeared. We lost the championship by 2 points, but the girls played their best game of the season. Afterward, as we gathered in our team circle, Lucia spoke up. "Coach, remember when that guy said we didn't belong here? That we weren't elite enough?" I nodded. "Look at us now," she said, gesturing around at the packed gym, the community that had shown up to support them. "We are elite because we fought for something that matters." The center continues to evolve. We've implemented some of Jackson's better ideas about equipment organization and program efficiency, but within our community-centered framework. Membership has surpassed previous records, and our grant funding was renewed with commendations for our inclusive approach. The most unexpected outcome came last month. The State Recreation Association contacted us about using Westlake as a case study in community-centered facility management. Apparently, our story had spread to other centers facing similar challenges. As part of this initiative, I was asked to conduct a workshop on balancing innovation with accessibility. Standing at the podium facing recreation directors from across the state, I thought about how far we'd come from those first dismissive, sweet-out comments. "Excellence isn't about who you keep out," I told them. "It's about who you bring in and what you help them achieve together." After the workshop, a director from a facility in the next county approached me. "We just hired a new activities coordinator with a military background. Talked a big game about optimization and elite programming. Name's Jackson Reed. Should I be concerned?" I smiled. "Let's just say you might want to review your community center's charter documents." Today, sometimes the most elite skill of all is knowing which battles are worth fighting, and having the courage to take the shot when it matters most. Update. 6 months later, our community center was featured in a national magazine as a model for inclusive excellence in public recreation. The photo they used: our diverse basketball court during open gym hours, packed with players of all ages and skill levels. The ultimate victory wasn't winning against Jackson. It was rebuilding something better together. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and become a part of our Everyday Life Stories community, where we celebrate quiet strength, real struggles, and unexpected victories. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. We love hearing from our amazing viewers around the world.